Welcome to this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on culture and identity. In this video, we're going to look at the work of Jean Baudrillard on hyperreality. Jean Baudrillard was a French sociologist and philosopher who introduced the concept of hyperreality as part of his larger critique of modern society, particularly in his work Simulacra and Simulation. Baudrillard's idea of hyperreality refers to a state where reality and fiction become indistinguishable. In hyperreality, simulations of reality become more real than actual reality itself. Now, this might seem like a complex idea, but in simple terms, it's the idea that what we see and experience is often not the real thing, but a version of reality shaped by media, technology, and culture. Baudrillard argues that in the modern world, especially with the rise of mass media, we no longer experience the true reality, but instead live in a world of representations and simulations. These simulations become so real that we treat them as reality, even though they are not. In this video, we're going to break down this concept step by step, with some examples to make it easier to understand. To fully grasp hyperreality, it's important to first understand simulacra and simulation. Simulacra are copies or representations of things that either no longer have an original or never had one in the first place. Simulation is the process of creating these copies or imitations. Baudrillard argued that our world is now full of simulacra, images and representations that replace the real thing. For example, if we think about a theme park like Disneyland, Disneyland is not a real place. It's a simulated version of various environments like fairy tales, Wild West towns, and space exploration. People go to Disneyland not to experience real places, but to experience an idealized, simulated version of these places. In Baudrillard's terms, Disneyland is a simulacrum, a copy of something that never really existed. Baudrillard suggests that in modern society we are surrounded by these simulacra. We are no longer connected to the real world. Instead, we interact with images, symbols, and simulations that replace the original reality. Hyperreality occurs when the simulation becomes more real to us than reality itself. In a hyperreal world, people begin to prefer the simulation to the original reality. The boundaries between the real and the artificial become blurred, and it becomes difficult to tell them apart. If we take the example of social media, on platforms like Instagram or TikTok, people often present highly edited and filtered versions of their lives. They post pictures of themselves that are edited to look perfect, portray their lives as exciting and flawless, and create a hyper-real version of their identity. Followers might start to believe that this is their real life, but in reality it's an edited and filtered version, a simulacrum of their true self. This hyper-real version becomes more important or desirable than their actual life, as people strive to live up to these impossible standards. Another classic example is reality TV. Shows like Keeping Up with the Kardashians or Love Island are marketed as reality, but they are highly edited, staged, and produced to create drama and entertainment. The reality presented in these shows is not real life at all. It is a hyper-real version of a reality constructed to appeal to viewers. Baudrillard explains that hyperreality develops through 4 stages of simulacra. The first stage, where the image is a faithful copy of reality. In this stage, the representation, the image or symbol, is a direct reflection of something real. For example, if we use a photograph of a real tree, This is a simple copy of reality. The second stage is where the image becomes a distortion of reality, but people still recognise the connection to the original. At this stage, we could use the example of an artistic painting of a tree, which might distort reality, but we still understand that it is based upon a real tree. In the third stage, the image pretends to represent something real, but it doesn't correspond to any reality. It creates an illusion of reality. At this stage, an example could be a cartoon version of a tree in a movie, and this is a simulacrum. It's not a real tree, but it gives us the impression that it is. And the fourth stage is where the image has no connection to any reality. It is a pure simulation, existing on its own without any reference to something real. If we think of virtual reality games where trees and environments are completely simulated and have no real-world counterpart, these simulations are treated as real within the game world. Hyperreality can be found in many areas of life, including advertising. Advertisements often show products as more exciting or glamorous than they really are. For example, fast food ads show perfectly made burgers, but the real product never looks the same. The ad creates a hyper-real image of the food. In sports games like FIFA or EAFC, players get to experience a hyper-real version of the sport. The game feels real even though it's entirely virtual. Within the news and media, news coverage sometimes sensationalizes events, turning them into spectacles rather than reporting the facts. The way news is presented can create a hyper-real version of events, focusing on drama rather than the real issues. And in virtual reality and video games, players are immersed in a completely simulated environment that can feel more real than reality itself. The line between the game world and real life blurs, especially with advancements in virtual reality technology. Baudrillard argued that hyperreality has serious implications for how we live our lives. In a hyperreal society, people might struggle to distinguish between real life and simulations. They might become more interested in simulations like social media personas or video game worlds than in actual human relationships or real-world experiences. The problem with hyperreality is that it can make us lose touch with what is real. For example, if people spend all their time on social media, they may start believing that the idealized lives that they see online are real and feel bad about their own lives. This leads to a distorted sense of reality and unrealistic expectations about how people should look or live. Baudrillard's concept of hyperreality challenges us to think about the way in which we experience the world today. As media, technology and simulations become more advanced, it becomes harder to tell the difference between reality and fiction. Whether it's through social media, video games or entertainment, hyperreality has changed the way we perceive the world. Baudrillard encourages us to be critical of these simulations and remember that behind the hyperreal images, there is still a real world. That concludes this Tutor to You Sociology topic video on culture and identity, looking at the work of Jean Baudrillard on hyperreality. Thanks for watching.